Great. I see quite a few familiar faces. Bob, how are you doing? Bob Corson, I see, and other folks. I'll see Joe. I guess Joe is not, I'm not sure Joe is with us quite yet, Joe Benkert, but how are you guys doing?
Joe's never with us. He's always out there on his own.
Hey,
Okay.
how you doing? You been out shooting?
Was that addressed to me or?
Yeah, Glenn, you've been out?
Yeah. So we've got these, I was able to shoot 2 winter wonderlands in May and another one in late April. So I don't know if you guys have been trying to take advantage of these big upslope storms we've been getting, but the last one, which was it was like Tuesday a week ago, I think it was just spectacular. I mean, 8 inches of fresh snow at Sprague Lake and Sunrise Light, and the lake is thawed enough you could get a reflection, and it's like, wow.
Oh my God.
Yeah, sign me up. It's really lucky.
Every time I try to go, it's like, man, it's such a great. I want to go to what's the other one by Bear?
Bear Lake or Dream Lake or
the one before Dream.
Nymph Lake.
Yeah, well, right in there. I wanted to do a snowshoe, and every time I wanted to go up there, it's like, oh, I'm skiing. Damn, skiing is getting away with my photography.
Yeah, yes, that's terrible.
Right.
Glenn, with that background, you look like you're going to do an SNL skit. I hope.
That is
you got a weekend update thing going for us later.
I see.
Somebody's going to slide in with a chair.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm afraid I missed that SNL episode. So we have a world map behind me, along with partly you can see a map of the United States. So I suppose, I could be pretend I'm Christian Amanpour and point out the latest hotspots around the globe. But I figured you guys are probably more interested in meteor showers.
Well, I think we'll stick with photography. There's enough. That's why we do this, right? Ignore all the bad stuff.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
At least for tonight.
Give it like 2 or 3 more minutes. We still got a couple more that just came in, and it's probably a couple.
Sure. No worries.
And for those who just came in, we apologize that if there was any confusion on the links to the Zoom meeting. There was an incorrect one that was out there until about 2 hours ago when we recognized that. And so I don't know if it was, I sent an email out just about an hour ago on that, and hoping that's where everybody was able to catch the right one. So it looks like if we've got, let's see, what is it, 26, 28 people on here. So at least there's that many that got the right link. So.
Sounds good. So how about you guys? Anybody been out on some fun shoots lately, or?
Most of mine have been very local. I know, Darren, you've been out and about Oregon and Utah, right? He's on mute.
Yeah. He's probably drinking a beer and relaxing.
Yeah, I just got back from Utah for 5 days. So
Unmute, Darren.
Hey, unmute yourself.
Hey guys, yeah, I'm just back from Utah for a while. Just spent some time in Oregon, and I'm actually just now editing some pictures from my Utah trip. So
nice,
great.
Yeah, I'm home for 2 weeks, and then I'm off again for 10 days.
Getting back into the world traveler thing, huh, Darren?
Yeah, I'm fully vaccinated. I'm good to go. So I see that Europe's going to open back up, and I'm excited. I might be able to get to Ireland after all.
We're supposed to go to Africa at the end in November, so it's still sketchy there, but we'll see.
By November, I've got to think that, and I know that there are parts of the world that are still struggling a lot with this thing, but hopefully by then that even those kind of outer locations like that will have things somewhat under control. So.
Yeah, hopefully they get that. But the hard part is obviously trying to plan ahead and anticipate. Just trying to find air flights and what they're doing, and some countries will let you in, some won't. It's still a little up in the air.
Hey, Darren, did you notice when you were in Utah, I went to a couple of places and they made sure they had the sign that said mask not required.
Yeah,
it was in bold. I mean, like,
no. The only place I had to wear my mask in Utah was the grocery store in Moab. They specifically had a sign that said mask required, but other than that, no mask.
Yeah, they made a point though, a big not. It was very
I'll tell
funny.
you, that's, I don't care what anybody's belief is on vaccines. I personally wasn't going to get vaccinated. But when I realized that was my ticket to freedom, yeah,
Yep.
I'm in.
Good for you, man.
That's right.
And I had COVID for 8 weeks, so I try to tell everybody to go get it. So
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a long haul, Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't end up in the hospital, did you, Bob? You were just sick?
no, it's funny. I had no fever. I had chills for 8 weeks, and this big frame of mine lost 10 pounds. So
Wow.
it's totally crazy, and I'm kind of back. But man, I try to convince everybody I know to get the vaccine because I've had it, and you don't want it.
Yeah. I had a friend whose wife got it back east, and she was healthy, and she didn't make it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, man.
For 3 weeks and passed away. It's crazy.
I had one friend who was in the hospital for 4 weeks and where they had to, induce a coma and all of that. And that was 4 weeks of that, and still is struggling with it. Still has some after effects for sure. But
Hey, Michael,
Yes.
I don't want to prematurely ask the question, but did you get any surveys back?
yeah, I just got some feedback from. I'll cover that here real quickly. I have that.
Okay.
I have that in my notes, but I don't have all of the details. Bruce has
I
some of it.
sent you an email, Michael, but if you want, just let me know and I can share the screen too if you want to share the screen.
So the short story is, I'll jump on this right now since the topic is up there, and then I'll skip it on my notes part of it. But so we sent out a thanks, Bruce, for sending that out, putting that together, the survey that we went out. Thank you we got a lot of responses back, like 36 responses in that. So obviously it's something that's top of mind for a lot of people. What we got back there, as you can see, is the time frame, starting as early as June, maybe next month, having meetings in person. Again, going back to what we brought up at the last meeting, I mentioned that the Civic Center is come out, and I guess the city of Lone Tree is letting us have access to the building. And Bruce, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's not necessarily any big restrictions on it. I think it's similar to what, say, like grocery stores and some of the other things that are going on here in Douglas County, which means that, it's kind of an honor system type of deal. But if you haven't been vaccinated, you're supposed to wear a mask. If you are vaccinated, 2 weeks after your second vaccination or whatever, and that you're free to attend pretty much anything without masks. I think that's what the parameters are. And if we go along with that, you don't have to do social distancing and so forth, which would be pretty challenging in the small environment that we have there. But so anyways, it's kind of a long answer to the fact that it looks like 70% of the responses back have come back with, meeting in person. And I'm wondering if, some of those other ones that are off that either still aren't comfortable with it, or you may even have some people answering that just who logistically it's difficult to make it in person to the meetings. And so Zoom meetings would be the preference there. So with that, we will get together and see if we can do it as soon as June or whether we wait till July. But Darren, I think to answer your question.
Hold on a second. This is hilarious. So this question right here, if you were to hold events at the Civic Center, do you feel safe attending? 83% of the people said yes. But then if you scroll up and look at the other responses, I don't feel like those 83 people coincide with some of these others. Like, would you prefer having presentations done in person? Only 52. So that's telling me that 30% of the people,
they need a big venue,
are lying.
No, I think what some of that might be is, like I say, maybe it's some of the logistics of, you may have a lot of people who would feel safe attending, but either would rather do the Zoom thing just from the convenience of their home and not get in their car and drive whatever distance it is.
Yeah,
or maybe they're people who live a little bit further out. I'm guessing that's where that variance is.
Additionally, I was thinking that you could have some competition nights that are judged by a guy in Massachusetts or California. So a certain percent would make sense to do it from home. But like Bruce was saying, maybe you could have a Zoom meeting within a live meeting, so it wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Right.
So I guess the big question, Michael, is
Yeah.
are we going to have a meeting in June?
So I just got these results. As you're seeing them, I got them. So we'll and I know we need to come up with that decision pretty quick here, right? So
I know for me personally, I'm so done with online meetings.
Yeah.
Like if I never do another one, I'll be okay.
I get it.
But
we have one I'll go over that. In August, we have one that sort of has to be done virtually. But
gotcha.
aside from just logistics of the presenter, but aside from that, I think we're, I feel like personally, I know where I voted on it and I would feel comfortable and part of it just wanting to see people again, rather than on this little grid that's in front of me here. So. Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead. I'll start the meeting, and we just covered one of the topics right there. So, again, thank you everybody for joining us. This is our 10th meeting of the year. Thank you, Glenn, for joining us for tonight's presentation night.
Welcome.
Interestingly, I had to bring this up. Glenn was the last in-person guest that we had. That was back in February of 2020.
Oh, really?
So it could be that you were the last in-person guest that we had, and now tonight you are potentially the last Zoom guest that we have.
One for the history books.
Aside from we've got one in August that we have to do. So you kind of hit both sides of that spectrum. Okay, the next topic I'm going to skip here. That we just covered that about meeting in person. Let's see. And then, really that was a big part of it that I had as far as kind of the updates on what's going on there. I'm just going to go through a couple of the upcoming schedule events that we have. One is the Exploring the Light. We have and Glenn, you happen to be here tonight and you're the judge for that. So thank you again for stepping in and helping us with that.
You're welcome.
We have the Exploring the Light. That's at the Lone Tree Art Center. The drop off for those images, for those that are participating and were selected, that is on May 24th. And then the opening reception, we're still working on that. And this again is partly depending upon schedules and Glenn's schedule and so forth and that. But a couple of the slots that they have tentatively are, one would be Friday, June 4th. So that would be an evening event. They've never done that as an evening event. And if that one doesn't work, then there's also the afternoon of Sunday, June 6th. So more on that to come, but that part of it's not yet decided. And I didn't even check that Glenn may have workshops going on that weekend. So
no, I'm actually available either of those days. So
okay.
And I already communicated that to.
Okay. And I can be flexible with whichever with whichever one too, whatever's convenient for most. So. Anyhow, that's the update on that one. Let's see. The next meeting that we have, maybe we can do this one in person. It's as soon as June 2nd, but it's one of the exhibition nights for those that have participated in that. It's similar to our competitions, but in this we don't really get judged, but you have an opportunity to submit up to a few images during the meeting. You get to describe kind of where you were, why you shot that, what your thought process was on it, maybe some tidbits in terms of like what your processing thoughts were on it. And it's an opportunity for others to kind of share their, thoughts and suggestions and that. So I've found those exhibition nights to be real beneficial just from a learning standpoint. And they're a lot of fun, and there's not the pressure of what your scores are going to be on it. So again, that will be the evening of June 2nd. And then June 16th, we have Joseph Roybal. He's going to be presenting color theory for landscape photography. July, usually we take the first week of July off, first Wednesday of July off, just because it's during the 4th of July week and people are busy and so forth. So we just have one meeting in July, and that is, I believe it's going to be the 21st, and that is the scavenger hunt. We've done this the last couple of years. Bruce organizes a series, a shot list that people are go out and look for those scenes and come back and with their images. And then we take them from there, and then we actually have a subsequent meeting where we go through, and there's actually some judging on that and scoring and awards that come with that one. So July scavenger hunt, and like I say, I believe it's the 21st. That's the third Wednesday
Yeah,
of July.
21st. It's the 21st.
21st.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. And again, it feels like this year, certainly something like that, outdoors and so forth, could be certainly done in person. So we'll get the plans put together for that event. Let's see, August 18th. This is the one that will have to be via Zoom. We have Tim Gray. He has a daily that does feedback, or he has an email list out there that he does on Photoshop, Lightroom, and post-processing and so forth. What he's going to be presenting to us will be on the app PhotoPills. And PhotoPills, for those who aren't familiar with it, is really useful for landscape photography, for things such as planning the positions of the moon, positions of Milky Way, positions of the sun, hyperfocal distance, long exposure calculations, and several other things in that. So he's going to be presenting that. It's going to be via a webinar under his platform, but we'll do our social 30 minutes beforehand, and through the communication that we've had with him, we'll have still the ability to do Q&A and that. So again, that's August 18th. September 1st, we have competition. Still looking at, we'll get to everybody what the, if that one's going to be a theme night as opposed to open, with what the themes will be for that one. September 15th, we have a couple of our members, Ashley and Carino, are two 2020 Photographers of the Year winners. They're going to be giving a presentation on how they achieved that success, keeping in mind that the two of them, when they won that award, or those two awards, I should say, that they had only been photographing for about 2 years each. So they're going to kind of share some of their secrets as to how they went about learning to be so successful at this. And then we'll come back with, we're still working on some of the programs for the later months of the year. Some of that we haven't decided yet, because we're kind of dependent to some extent on whether we're going to be meeting in person or Zoom. It feels to me like those ones certainly will be in person. So we'll come up with more on that. And then let's see. I also put on here, hey, at the end, let's have a board elections this year. That was something that was missed last year. So we will have that one this year for sure. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and a quick introduction of Glenn Randall. Thank you again for joining us tonight.
Welcome.
Glenn is a professional full-time photographer, writer, and instructor for 42 years. He's got over 2,000 photographs that have been published, including 87 covers and over 10,000 prints sold. I think I saw some of the information there. Several books that have been published through Rocky Nook, including his most recent one, which is the second edition of his popular The Art, Science, and Craft of Great Landscape Photography. I have the first edition. I probably should upgrade that with the second edition, because that first one was, I found it to be really beneficial just in terms of the way it's laid out, the information that's in there, the references to what your settings were and so forth. Real helpful in terms of not just seeing what the shots are, but also knowing how it was that you went about getting those, and then also why those settings are being used. So I thought that one was real helpful in terms of my personal development. A couple of other books that are out there. Let's see, a couple of the other ones that I have, I should say, is Dusk to Dawn. That's a night photography book that, in the same manner, is very well presented. And then also the Sunrise from the Summit. That's the first light, or last light, I guess, at all of the Colorado's 14ers. And I think I mentioned this last time, but just thinking about the challenge of getting to and from each of the 14ers in our state for sunrise or sunset means that you're traveling to some of those treacherous routes in the dark. Glenn also has had 25 feature articles published in Outdoor Photographer, and is a contributing editor for that publication. I just looked online today. A lot of your 2021 workshops are already sold out, but there's a few spots still open. The ones that I think I saw openings for were Rocky Mountain National Park. There's one July 12th to 14th, August 3rd through 5th. There's a San Juan's workshop, July 28th, 29th. Canyonlands, October 5th through 7th, as well as privately scheduled workshops that could be done anytime that you're not busy with some of those other ones. I think last time we were on, when you were meeting in person, I was being encouraged to commit to a private workshop to summit Capitol Peak and go experience that knife's edge. But I have not committed to that one yet. I need to get in shape before I consider something like that. But I need to put
Okay.
that one on my bucket list.
All right.
So anyways,
Sounds good.
that was the intro. I know I missed probably a lot of things that you still
Oh.
do and will be doing. Some of the other workshops that I didn't mention there, like I say, you've already sold out, so I didn't
Sure.
those ones up
Sure.
specifically. But with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you if you have anything else that you would like to add to that, or I'll also open up if anybody else has any questions with regards to anything I brought up with any of our upcoming events or thoughts on those.
So one tip, if you are interested in a book, is if you go to my website, you can get a coupon code to save 10% on actually any of Rocky Nook's books, including mine. So, and then I get some minuscule referral fee if you do that, but you also save 10%, which is, at least that's probably some of the shipping if you buy a paper book. So, and that July workshop that Michael mentioned, it's actually July 2022, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's so we're working way in advance here on that one.
No wonder that one's not sold out yet.
Yeah,
I'm gonna put a link out in the chat also to your website. I think I have
a
page that goes to your workshops themselves, but from there they can flip to the other menus on your page as well. So I'll send that out here.
Absolutely. All right, shall I get started? Any other questions anybody has? All right, well, first off, I also wanted to say thank you to everybody. I see or saw, quite a few familiar names and faces pop up on the screen as people join the meeting. So thank you all for coming to yet another screen session of the day. So tonight's topic is how to photograph the Perseid meteor shower, or more generally, meteor showers in general. Meteor showers are, nature's most spectacular slow motion fireworks show. So standing under a dark sky and, watching a meteor shower is, it's a breathtaking experience, but creating a compelling photograph of that experience is a bit of a challenge. So let's start with a little bit of eye candy, give you sort of an idea of how I've gone about this. I'm going to share my screen 2 sharing. So you should all be looking at a photograph of the the Perseid meteor shower over Turret Arch there in Arches National Park. So all of these photographs that I'm going to show you are composites. So the way I actually did them was I shot the land with the correct exposure for the land. I shot the background sky separately with the correct exposure for the sky, and I timed the photographing of the sky so that the radiant of the meteor shower was in the right place in relation to the land, and we'll talk about radiance in a minute. And then I shot the meteors basically by shooting an infinite number of frames just right back to back, and then waded through them and found all of the bright meteors and composited it all together. So I just didn't want anybody to think, oh, how Glenn gets so lucky, he caught 62 bright meteors in one 30-second exposure. It's like, no. This is a composite. Call it a photo illustration if you prefer. But just a few more examples of what can be done with that approach. Perseid meteor shower over Snowmass Mountain and Hagerman Peak from Snowfield Lake. So that's in the Maroon Bells Snowmass Wilderness. Perseid meteor shower over the Titan, which is in the Fisher Towers near Moab. And then I actually did 2 versions of this. This first one, I shot the land about I think it was 16 minutes after sunset, when there was still enough light to capture the land well. Then I also put together a second version using the same meteors, but this time I used a shot of the Titan taken by moonlight. So I was there actually for 2 nights, working basically all night, trying to capture as many meteors as possible. So there are really only 2 meteor showers in a year that are strong enough, produce enough meteors to be really worth staying up all night shooting. So one is the Perseids, which they peak August 11th, 12th, and 13th. The other is the Geminids, which peak December 13th to 14th. There's certainly a number of other meteor showers during the year. Sometimes the Leonids are impressive enough to shoot, but it's kind of hit or miss. The two that are reliable enough to be worth shooting are the Perseids and the Geminids. So this is the Geminids over Great Sand Dunes National Park, taken from the top of High Dune last December. And then quite possibly my all-time favorite meteor shower shot, perhaps because I just know what went into making it. This is the Geminid meteors over Monument Basin, which is in the Needles District in Canyonlands National Park. Alrighty, so basics for shooting meteor showers. For starters, you need a darkest sky as possible. So you need to get as far away from city lights as possible. And then obviously you need clear skies. Moonlight is another major problem. Ideally, you'll be shooting with no moon in the sky. Anything over about 50% illumination for the moon is probably going to be a complete bust, because unless you get really lucky and see some bright fireballs. But basically, the moonlight makes the sky so bright that the meteors don't stand out against the sky. So, which leads us to, why should you try to shoot the Perseids this August? Well, it's actually an exceptional opportunity that is not going to repeat for quite a while. On August 11th, which is the peak night this year, according to the American Meteor Society, the moon is only 15% illuminated, and it sets at 10:08 p.m. here in Boulder. So meteor showers tend to peak after midnight, so you'll have plenty of time, moon-free viewing time and shooting time to try to capture dark meteors. The situation is only slightly worse on the night of August 12th and the night of August 13th. Both those nights, the moon does set well before midnight, so you still do have a lot of moon-free viewing time. So if you miss the opportunity to shoot the Perseids this August, you're gonna have to wait a long time. The Geminids this December washed out by an 81% illuminated moon till about 3 a.m. So we've only got less than 3 hours of dark skies to try to capture meteors. The Perseids in August 2022 will be plagued by a full moon all night long. The December 2022 Geminid meteors will again be a bust due to bright moonlight. And then the August 2023 Perseids, you're going to have to deal with a crescent moon rising into your frame, assuming that you're shooting with the radiant in the frame, at 2 in the morning on one night and 3 a.m. the next night. So you're gonna have to deal with this moon, causing flare and washing out your images. So bottom line, be there or be square. August 2021, this August, is the time to shoot the Perseids if you are, or any meteor shower, if you're interested over the next few years. All right, so continuing on to a few basics. Meteor showers have a radiant. It's a point in the sky where all the meteors appear to originate. Now, you need to qualify that. If you look at this image here, you can see that the radiant is right about here approximately, but none of the meteors actually start right at the radiant. Most meteors travel maybe roughly 30 degrees or so or more before they become visible. But if you trace all those meteor streaks back to their origin, they all appear to begin at the radiant. Meteor showers, of course, are named for their radiance. The Perseids, for example, appear to radiate from a point in the constellation Perseus. And then the radiant, like all celestial objects, appears to move as the Earth rotates during the night. So meteor showers are usually most active after midnight. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is that just by chance, the radiant for the most active meteor showers is highest in the sky after midnight in the Northern Hemisphere. That means more meteors are visible before they dip below the horizon. Also, meteors that are directly above you are much closer to you than meteors that appear near the skyline. So obviously the light of distant meteors is attenuated by both distance and by just the light having to travel through all that atmosphere. Second reason, and let me go on to a diagram here. The second reason that you see more meteors after midnight is explained by this diagram. So let me explain what's going on here. So the Earth is, of course, rotating on its axis. And in this diagram, we are assuming it's rotating counterclockwise. So this is the direction of the sun. This is the sunlight side of the Earth, the night side of the Earth. But the Earth is also moving in its orbital path around the sun. So once it gets, dark and you are on the night side of the Earth, and if you see a meteor at that time, that meteoroid basically has to, the little particle called a meteoroid that has to create the streak of light called the meteor, it has to overtake Earth, so to speak. So the analogy is, let's say you're driving down a road at 60 miles an hour. There's somebody going the same direction you are behind you who's going 70 miles an hour. They're catching up to you. But if they were to collide with you for some unknown reason, the difference between the speeds of the two vehicles is only 10 miles an hour. Not that big a difference. However, after midnight, if you're over on this side of the Earth and you see, and a meteoroid strikes the Earth, it's basically striking Earth head on. So the analogy then is, if a car is coming toward you in the opposite lane going 70 miles an hour and you're going 60 miles an hour and you were to collide, the combined speed of the vehicles is 130 miles an hour. So obviously the collision will be catastrophic. So meteors are brightest when they enter Earth's atmosphere as fast as possible because they burn up, they burn hot, they burn fast, and you see brighter meteors. All right, now you do not need to locate the radiant to see meteors. Meteors appear in all parts of the sky, so you can look in any direction and see meteors. So the simplest approach to shooting a meteor shower is just to try to capture one meteor above an interesting terrestrial feature. So you set up the camera, you focus at infinity, you set the right exposure on a moonless night in a dark sky location that is approximately 30 seconds f2.8 ISO 6400. And then you just shoot back-to-back 30-second exposures for as long as possible, until you run out of steam or run out of dark skies. Go home, sift through the images, select the frame with the best meteor that is in a pleasing relationship to the land, and there's your shot. So here's an example of that. Here's the Perseids with the single best meteor that I captured. Obviously, you'd probably want to crop this down, to put a little more emphasis on that meteor. If you're using a correct exposure for the sky, the land is going to be very dark, basically silhouette. Maybe that's fine if the landform is interesting enough. If not, you may want to shoot a separate exposure for the land. This was about, as I said, 16 minutes after sunset. This was by moonlight on the next night. I think the moon was 30 or 40% illuminated. Or you can also just do a very long exposure. Even if the entire night is moonless, you can do a very long exposure, usually about 2 stops longer than the sky exposure. Or so dark sky location, 2 minutes, f2.8 ISO 6400, something like that. Okay. Now let's say you do want to include the radiant, however, because you're planning to do a composite like the ones I just showed you that includes many meteors. So 2 good sources of information on the azimuth and altitude of the radiant are found in Starry Night and in PhotoPills. So azimuth then is just the compass bearing, the angle in a horizontal plane measured from true north. The altitude, I'm using the astronomer's definition of altitude. That's the number of degrees the radiant is above a level horizon. It's how far up in the sky it is. So let's take a look at, let me stop that. Let's go take a look at this astronomy program. There we are. So this is an astronomy program called Starry Night. It's like 79 bucks, something like that. You can buy the least expensive version if you're interested. What I like about it is it shows you a map of the sky with the radiant marked. There are phone apps that do this as well. This is the best desktop app that I found. So, the radiant for the Perseids is in the constellation Perseus, but Perseus is a pretty obscure constellation. So the easiest way to locate it is, the Pleiades are easier to find than Perseus, and Cassiopeia, of course, very famous constellation. So the radiant for the Perseids, if you follow these 2 stars in Cassiopeia down, that's pointing approximately at the radiant, and the distance from the radiant to this star is approximately 3 times the distance between this star and this star. So that probably gets you close enough to know pretty much where in the sky you need to be looking to see the radiant. If you want to do it a little more precisely, you can go to click on this eye there and then position in the sky. And this will give you the position, the azimuth and altitude of the radiant at the date and time and location that you've set. So that's one good source of information. Obviously, a lot of you already have PhotoPills. So let's go to PhotoPills, take a quick look at it. So there's a couple of sources of information for meteor showers. One is, of course, the meteor showers pill, relatively new. I tap on that, and then you can choose which meteor shower you're interested in. So we're interested in the Perseids. What am I doing? There we are. Oops, tapped the wrong. No, Perseids. There we go. And so now you have information like on, when is the peak? August 12th, 2021, 4:26 a.m., approximately 87.8 meteors per hour. And you have information on where the radiant is at that time. The other source of information in PhotoPills is up here in the planner. And I actually already saved a plan just to simplify the demonstration here. So I set the location to Snowfield Lake in the Maroon Belt Snowmass Wilderness, which is where I shot this image. So this is Snowfield Lake is right here in the foreground. That's Snowmass Mountain, that's Hagerman Peak. So let's go look at what the map is showing us here. So I shot that background sky at like 2:57 a.m., I think it was, on August 13th of 2015. So this light gray line is showing you where the radiant is at that moment. So there's Snowmass Mountain, there's Hagerman Peak. I deemed this to be an interesting composition to place the radiant kind of roughly right above the saddle between these two dramatic peaks, which I hoped to reflect in the lake. So those are the two best sources of information on where the radiant is. Let's go back to Lightroom for a second. So let me pause for a second here. Are there questions about this whole idea of planning, sort of the basics here? What is the radiant? How do you plan a shot? How do you know where the radiant is? Anybody have a question? Okay, let's talk about lenses then for meteor showers. So shooting a meteor shower is a bit like shooting with a flash unit. If you're using a flash unit in a situation where the flash is the only light source, then the shutter speed's irrelevant, right? Because the flash duration is so short. As long as the shutter speed's longer than the duration of the flash, you're golden. So meteors are very bright in relation to the night sky, but they're still relatively dim. They only last a second or two. So you need to capture as much light as possible during that 1 or 2 seconds when the meteor is flashing across the sky. So in other words, you want a large maximum aperture, or to be more precise, you want a maximum size aperture that has the biggest possible area. It's really the area that we're concerned about here, not just the F number, because you want the biggest possible detector to capture all that light. But you also want a wide angle of view because the meteors can appear anywhere in the sky. So, a 14 millimeter or 16 millimeter f2.8, certainly a good choice. A lot of you have lenses like that, I'm sure. The best single lens out there for full frame cameras would be Sigma's 14 millimeter f1.8, because that gives you more than double the light gathering power compared to, say, a 14 millimeter f2.8. It's a $1,600 lens. I certainly don't own it, don't plan to buy it. I'm just going to go rent it for this August. So let me show you a diagram that makes this a little bit clearer. Okay, so this is the relative sizes of the aperture for fast wide angle lenses. So, and these dots are to scale. So this is the size of a 16 millimeter f2.8 aperture, wide open. All these are wide open. Here's a 14 millimeter f1.8. So this is the Sigma lens that I just mentioned. 185% larger area than a 16-8. Then a 24 f1.4, it has 900%, 9 times the area of a 16-8. But the angle of view is getting a little bit narrower. A 35 f1.4, it has 19 times the area of a 16-8. But now the angle of view is really too narrow to make it useful, because too many meteors are either going to be outside the frame or going to exit the frame during it, and you really can't use those. So my compromise is, if you want to throw lots of preparation and some money at the problem, you can rent, say, 2 24 f1.4 lenses, set them on a couple of tripod heads bolted to a bracket, which you mount to a bigger tripod head, and then you arrange the fields of view of the 2 lenses so they just barely overlap. So with 2 24 f1.4s, you have approximately the same angle of view as a 16mm lens, but you have 9 times the light gathering power. For every second that meteor is flashing across the sky, you collect 9 times as much light from it. So you get more meteors and you get brighter meteors. So this is my go-to solution if I can haul around this much hardware, because it's a lot of weight and bulk and, all the extra batteries and blah, blah, blah. Questions about lenses?
No, not on the lenses yet. Here, I'll just go through here real quick. There's a
Sure.
Okay. Bob Corson asks, how do you select Perseid meteor shower in PhotoPills? Is that actually on the menu system?
How do you select the
How do you, within when you're in PhotoPills, is there a
right.
Something that selects meteors? I think you showed, and then there's
yes, yeah. Let me let me just come back to PhotoPills for a second here. Okay, so this is of course the main menu, and there is this meteor showers pill, which gives you the overview that we talked about. If I tap on Perseids, this is kind of overview information. But then if you want the map, you go to the planner, and then at the top, you could just swipe across. When it opens, you're probably at, sort of the sun moon data. And then at the top, you can just swipe, then you get moon data, swipe again, you get civil, nautical, astronomical twilights, you get Milky Way information, eclipse information, and finally you get meteor shower information, and you tap on this icon in the top left corner to load the meteor shower that you want. Does that answer the question?
I'm sure it does.
Okay.
It would have answered it for me, and I'm sure that the
okay.
that is there. One last question here, real quick. Joe Benkert asks, exposure 30 seconds, f2.8, and then he has ISO with a question mark.
6400. That's kind of ISO 6400. That's kind of my classic Milky Way exposure for a dark sky location. If you've got, the glow of city lights or something that you're dealing with as well, that may be too much. But that will produce a bright Milky Way right straight out of the camera. And it's a good exposure as well for kind of the background sky for meteor shower images. Now, as I'll show you in a minute, there is a reason why you might want to expose your meteors a little bit darker than that. Maybe knock it down 2/3 of a stop from what you're shooting for the background sky. Okay, other questions?
I think that was it. I think that clarified.
Okay.
Those. Thank you.
Okay, so let's let me show you one other thing to in terms of planning. So you may recall, if we go back to Starry Night and we look at the data on where the radiant's going to be. So basically the azimuth, the compass bearing, is rounded 43 degrees. The altitude is 49 degrees. So when I was planning that shot of the Perseids over Snowmass Mountain, I used photo ephemeris web to kind of figure out where I wanted it to go. how did I pick Snowfield Lake? There's not even a trail to it. It's a very obscure place. Well, I knew I needed to look northeast. So I wanted to find some place where I could have some dramatic peaks to the northeast. And I was scanning over maps and realized, if I go to Snowmass Mountain, go to Snowfield Lake, excuse me, and you remember the azimuth of the radiant at this particular time of night, 3 a.m. essentially, which is when I wanted to shoot the background sky. You notice that the bearing there, I dropped the primary marker on Snowfield Lake, I dropped the secondary marker on the saddle between Snowmass Mountain and Hagerman Peak, and the bearing then, meaning the bearing of the gray pin from the red pin, the direction to the radiant, is 43 degrees. It also tells me that the altitude, the elevation angle in his terms, of that ridge is only 14 degrees. That's that information here. So, but you remember the radiant at that time of night is 49 degrees above the horizon. In other words, I've got tons of sky between the radiant and the horizon. So this is a good time to shoot, that the radiant's high in the sky, should be seeing, it's well after midnight, should be seeing lots of meteors. And when I shoot the background sky at that time of morning, 3 a.m., that will put the radiant in what I deem to be an interesting place in between Snowmass Mountain and Hagerman Peak. So let me come back and show that to you one more time so you can visualize that. Okay, so there's Snowmass Mountain, Hagerman Peak, and the radiant is basically right about up there. Okay, let's see here. All right, so then, as I mentioned briefly at the beginning, the way I've gone about, the simplest way to go about shooting this is just find an interesting land element that you want to put at the bottom of your frame, wide angle, fast, lens, correct exposure for the sky, shoot back-to-back frames all night, find the single brightest meteor. If you want to composite them, if you want some detail in the land, just back up a step. If you want detail in the land, you probably need to do a separate exposure for the land, or use a little moonlight, or shoot right, a little bit after sunset, a little bit before sunrise, composite those together. But if you want to do something more like what I've been showing you, then, you shoot the land separately, the background sky separately at the time when the radiant's in the right position in relation to the land, and then you shoot all the meteors. So then your problem is, how do you composite all this together? Well, during my workshops, I teach a couple of procedures, one fairly simple, one pretty elaborate, on how to composite good sky into good land and make it look believable. But that's a little beyond the scope of this talk. I do want to show you, though, one slick trick in Photoshop for compositing meteors into the background sky that'll save you a lot of grief. So let's go take a look at that right now. So let me find the two example images. All right, so this is the single brightest meteor I captured over Snowmass Mountain and Hagerman Peak for this shot that I'm using as my example. But obviously we don't want to use this as the background sky. There's just way too many clouds and things like that. So the shot that I chose for my background sky is this one, which actually has a little teeny meteor in it, as well as a jet, excuse me, and the radiant is right about there. The meteor is coming from the radiant. The radiant's fairly high in the sky. It's somewhere right about up there over the saddle between Snowmass and Hagerman. So our challenge then is to composite those two images. Now, if I put them side by side, just for a moment, you can see, here's my good meteor frame. Here's my background sky. The sky in the meteor shot is half stop darker or so, 2/3 darker than the background sky. And that's going to be important in this little procedure here. So what I'm going to do is right click on one of these images, and I'm going to choose Edit In. I'm not going to edit in Adobe Photoshop. I want to open as layers in Photoshop. I want these to open as 2 layers in a single file. So we'll get these open. It looks like I actually already had it open, didn't I? Let's see here. Let's get rid of that. Okay. So here we have our two images in a layer stack. Right now, the good meteor layer is on top. It's completely opaque. We cannot see any of the layer underneath. If I turn off this eye icon that controls visibility of that layer, turn that off. Now all we see is the layer underneath. Well, what we want is we want to see this meteor, but only this meteor from this frame. And we want to lay it into here. Oh, let's see. That's something is funky. Let's see. That's interesting. Oh, okay. Okay. Minor Photoshop bobble here. Let's try this again. All right. Starting over, edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. It looks like I had accidentally applied the mask to the image, and so it was already burned in. Let's try this again here. And that would have made the demonstration very confusing. Here we go. All right. Showing you again, we have the good meteor layer, and then underneath it, we have the good sky. We want to composite those two together. So in other words, we need to somehow select this meteor and mask out everything around the meteor so that we can't see any part of this image except for the meteor itself. So, you know, there's a lot of ways you could try to do that. I'm going to make it a little larger so we can see what we're doing. You know, I mean, you could grab the lasso tool and try to draw a selection around it. Okay, that's completely bogus. That's way too time consuming. You know, there's a lot of ways to try to do it. But what I'm going to suggest is the way to do it is to add a layer mask to the meteor layer. So a layer mask is just a way to tell Photoshop, show me this part of the layer to which it is attached and hide the rest. And the key thing to remember about layer masks is that white reveals, black conceals. Right now, the layer mask by default is pure white. So all we see is the layer to which it's attached. We've made no change because the white mask is revealing all of the good meteor layer. If I were to invert that mask to pure black, now all we see is the layer underneath because black conceals. So what we want then is a mask that's mostly black with a white streak where the meteor is. So I'm going to flip this mask back to white temporarily. So the question is, what's the easiest way to produce that effect? So easiest way I found is to choose the brush tool, make sure that your opacity is 100%, flow is 100%. The others are default. Make the brush a little bit bigger than the meteor streak is wide. And you could try just clicking here and you know, dragging along to erase it. Okay, that's bogus. That's not going to work very well. There's a better way. You know, first you want to make sure that your foreground color is black. If it's not, you can use this little double-headed arrow over here to flip it back and forth. But we want it to be black. We're going to click here, release the mouse, hold down Shift and click again. Now what we've done is we have, whoa. Did you guys just lose me? Sorry about that.
You're still there. We're good.
Yeah, somehow I just got this pop-up on my screen from somewhere. It thought I was doing something. Let me see if I can get rid of this. Good grief, where'd this come from? It won't move, it won't. There we go, sorry. Okay, sorry about, okay, it's gone now. Sorry about that. There's always guaranteed to be some technological glitch that I've never seen before every time I do a workshop. So what we've done now is we have temporarily made that meteor streak vanish, right? So if we were to look at the mask by itself, so if I alt click on the mask, we see just the mask itself. So what we have then is this all pure white mask with one black streak on it. Okay. I'm going to alt click on the mask again to bring back the image. So what we want to do is invert the mask. Control I inverts the mask. Ah, wonderful. Now we have our meteor composited into the layer underneath, but there's still a little problem. So let me zoom in so you can see the problem. Oops, we have kind of this halo of dark sky around the meteor. And there's, fortunately, you do not need to go in there with your brush and try to paint that out by, painting with black to hide the rest of that dark sky. We can just change the blend mode to lighten. So when you change the blend mode to lighten, what you're really doing is telling Photoshop, drill down straight through the layer stack, find the lightest pixel, and show me that pixel. So in this case, when you look at that dark sky halo around the meteor streak, I'll back up one step so you can see it again. So there's that dark halo. That dark halo, you remember this sky is darker than the background sky. So Photoshop is going to show you the correctly exposed sky, the background sky, and hide all the dark sky that was forming that dark halo around the meteor streak. Now, the meteor itself is much brighter than the background sky, so it shows you the meteor. So that's the slickest way I know to efficiently composite meteors into your background sky. So, all right, let's go back to Lightroom one more time. So there's one more thing I wanted to show you tonight, which is if you just drop all of the, there we go. If you just drop all the meteors in, then they're all over the place. They're chaotic because the radiant moves. So for the Perseids, the radiant actually moves in an arc like this. It's actually circumpolar around the North Star, meaning it never sets from this latitude. So because the radiant's moving, and then all the meteors emerge from the radiant, when you composite in all the meteors, you just get this chaotic mess. This is the Perseids. Here's what it looks like with the Geminids. The Geminids are an even worse problem because the radiant is low in the northeast sky at astronomical dusk. It's almost straight overhead at about 2 o'clock in the morning at this latitude. And by astronomical dawn, it is setting to the west. It's about 45 degrees above the horizon and almost due west. So it crosses, most of the sky during the night. So, one thing I think that's cool about meteor showers is that they do have this radiant. So, my preference is to, move that layer containing the meteors and align all of the meteors so that they appear to be coming from the radiant. As I say, you can call this photo illustration if you want. It's clearly not a literal recording in one exposure of what I saw, but it is the best way that I know to kind of capture the feeling of being out there, of watching these meteors fall, one a minute for hour after hour after hour. It's a really cool experience. Just bring your lawn chair, bring your foam pad, lie back and soak it all in. It's pretty cool. So anyhow, that's what I wanted to show you tonight. Thank you very much for your attention. Are there questions? Let me actually stop sharing here so we can see each other again. There we go. Let's see here. Pause share, new share, stop share. There we go. All right. We're all back, I think.
Yep, we're all back.
All right, very good. So anyhow, questions about meteor showers or about workshops or anything related?
Looks like we have one question from Kim Norby. What would you suggest a star tracker to photograph the meteor shower?
It's really not necessary. You could certainly use it and it would give you lower noise in the night sky for your background sky, but you can achieve the same effect by shooting multiple exposures of the background sky and then using either something like Sequator, which is free and seems to work well. I've used it a little bit, On the PC, you can buy Registar. Probably no reason to buy it at this point since Equator works well. On the Mac, there's Starry Landscape Stacker, I believe it's called, which is moderately priced. I hear good things about it. I'm on a PC, so I've not used it, but I've talked to very experienced people who've used it and thought it worked well. So that's an easier way to reduce noise in your night skies than to use a star tracker. But you could certainly do that. It wouldn't really do you any good for the meteors because they only last a second or two. So, the meteors aren't going to, they aren't going to significantly blur in 1 or 2 seconds. I mean, I suppose you could use the star tracker to keep the radiant in the same position in the frame, and then you wouldn't need to move your meteors around. But of course, then you'd have a completely blurry land and you'd need to, composite them together with a stationary image or multiple images of the land.
Okay. Another question is, so do you delete the meteors outside the radiant or only put in meteors within the radiant?
That sounds like maybe the person didn't quite understand what the radiant was, or either I don't understand the question. So the radiant is just a point in the sky where the meteors appear to originate. So my feeling is if I capture the entire meteor streak, within the frame of one of my, multiple cameras, 2 cameras, it goes in the image, so.
Because you're just basically stacking them together, like pulling each good meteor from wherever it comes from, just putting it in the image, right?
Correct. Now, there are some meteors that are, they're called sporadics that are not part of the meteor shower. A certain number of meteors fall, just any night of the year. You can see enough, see a meteor if you're out there at the right time and long enough, really. So the question is, what do you do with the sporadics? And I don't force them to become Perseids or Geminids. I either just drop them in and let them be random, or just don't use them.
Okay. Another question is, have you used or suggest Rincon 24 1.4 lens, which is cheaper, which is a cheaper alternative to the Canyon lens you mentioned? Have you used that?
So I'm sorry, what was the lens again?
Rokinon.
Rokinon, yeah. I have not used those lenses myself. So they make a 14-8, I believe. I didn't know that they made a faster 14 for a full frame camera, but if so, that would be a great thing.
This one says 24 1.4.
Oh, 24 f1.4. Sorry, connection was a little bad there. I've not used it. It has, obviously it's very inexpensive. It's manual only, manual focus. It does not sync, electronically with Canon cameras, or at least did not. Might be a little bit better with Nikon cameras. Has a little bit of a reputation for quality control issues, but if you get a good copy, hey, the price is right. It's 1/4 of the price of the Nikon or the Canon. It also has a reputation for not producing those little bat wings on stars that a lot of people call coma, but it's actually more properly called stellar aberrations. So yeah, I think if you bought it and tested it immediately and made sure it was a good, sharp copy, could be a great deal.
Okay. Another question, what happens in the southern hemisphere for the Perseids, example, Africa?
That is a good question, and I would need to go play around with PhotoPills or Starry Night to really give you a good answer to that. I guess I just don't know. I'd be speculating. I'd be guessing. So.
Okay. Are meteors still visible with the sky having some light pollution, or should I look only for pure dark sky?
Well, the darker the sky, the more meteors you're going to see. Trying to shoot it from the middle of Denver is probably pretty hopeless. But Rocky Mountain National Park, I mean, you saw my photos of the Geminids. There is some sky glow from Denver in the bottom left corner of the frame, but there was such a wide lens, 14 millimeter. There's still a lot of dark sky with a lot of meteors. So.
Okay. And then the other one, do I understand correctly that you keep reorienting the camera frame to the radiant through the night, then align the radiance in each frame to stack the meteor images, or you don't track the radiant, do you?
I make a crude effort to track the radiant by repositioning the camera, at least for the Geminids,
Okay.
because that radiant moves, as I said, from the northeast part of the sky to almost straight overhead to due west during the night. For the Perseids, because it's moving through a much smaller arc of the sky, you could certainly get away with just positioning the camera and leaving it stationary all night long, which is what I did, for example, for that Perseids over snowmass shot that I have showed.
Any other questions? I don't see any more in the chat box, but anybody want to unmute themselves and ask a question, or Michael?
No, let's see here. One just came through here.
Right.
Breakthrough. So Breakthrough Technologies on their filters. It says makes a filter that is supposed to reduce light pollution. Do you have any experience or know how that works?
I have never used that filter. I have no comment on that one. I know that Lonely Speck came out with the light pollution filter, and I traded some emails with Roger Clark, who's an astronomer, about it, and he did not think it would be terribly valuable. But to be honest, I can't remember precisely his reasoning or the logic behind his comments. So yeah, I guess I don't really have any information. Has anybody in this club actually used one of those?
Yeah, good question for the group. Anybody tried one, used one? Corey, I think you used one time, didn't you? And Joe, since you have it, did you use it? Have you tried it yet?
I own it, but I've not used it.
Okay.
Keep it
Okay.
A collector of equipment.
I have a lot of gear that I haven't used yet. Yeah. But no, I have not tried that one either, but I have heard about it, but I have not seen any reviews on it. So.
I see Rich said that he has one, but he hasn't had a chance to use it either. So
Okay.
maybe next year we'll all have tried it.
Yes, it's going to be a great year for photography.
Yes,
we hope. As long as the state's not burning down, as long as the western half of the United States is not burning down, I think we can hope for better than last year at any rate.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Great presentation, Glenn. Awesome. Always good, always helpful, very informative. And I'll be figuring out how I'm going to get up at the middle of the night and go photograph this thing.
There you go. All right. Yes. Well, it's going to be spectacular. And I'm certainly going to be out there and hoping for clear skies and see what I come up with. Well, thank you all very much for tuning in to this this talk, and best of luck with your photography.
Yeah, thank you so much, Glenn. This was, and again, just in terms of like your presentations are always really good of presenting the scientific parts of behind it and so forth. That I remember that before with your last presentation on the rainbows and the dynamics of it and so forth. And it's always really good to see how you were able to bring some of those elements into it and kind of the reason for why it is what we see up there in the skies and so forth. So really appreciate it. And
most welcome.
I started jotting down a couple of questions over here on the side, and as we went through the presentation, you answered them right through there. So I didn't have anything
good
at the end. So very thorough, very helpful.
Well, very good. Good. I hope it was helpful. Hope you guys are successful in getting some great shots.
And we'll look forward to seeing you at the reception, be it on the 4th or the 6th.
Yes.
Yes. Yep. Down in Lone Tree. I'll be there.
Great. All right.
Yeah, and thank you again for assisting with the judging and presenting for that. So really.
Oh, you're most welcome. My pleasure.
All right.
All right.
Questions for you? If not, we'll give everybody an early night off.
Great. Yeah, thank you and thank you everybody for attending tonight. Thank you. And we'll see whether the next meetings are via this format or hopefully pretty soon in person in that. So we'll let everybody know. Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Okay.
Bye.
Good night.